Okay, so my mom wanted to see how I do the handles, so I have a mug and I have some handles that I made. They're not exactly how I want them, so I'm going to be doing more than I normally do. And they kind of got a little bit hard. I'm looking for the softest one in here. So they're round, and I have a square mug, so I'm going to flatten them out a little bit to make them more square. I mean, I probably could just put the square one on and it'd be fine, but I didn't do any of the other ones that way, so in case somebody wants to buy two of something, I want to do two the same. So anyway, so here's the mug and here's the handle. I'm going to take my little roller thingy. Actually, what I need to do is I need to lay my mug down and put my wet cloth on top of the clay to get that side of it a little bit moist, like the word moist, so that it will stick. So I'm going to flatten this out, and it's kind of dry, so I'm trying to be careful so it doesn't crack, because you know, clay will crack if you push it too far when it's at a certain stage of dryness. It doesn't like it very much. So I'm trying to be gentle with this piece of clay. There will be a handle soon. Okay, so to the inside. I'm going to do the top sides next, the edges. I'm going to make it squarish so that it looks better with the mug. And basically I threw the mug, and then when I was finished throwing it on the wheel, it's a cylinder, and then I squished the sides to make it square when it was the right amount of dry. And I might still be able to squish it more if I wanted to, but I did that when it was pretty wet. Okay, so I've done like the sides and then the inside. I'm going to do the inside a little bit more. The part that's the hardest is the part that I already have curved, because it doesn't like to, fights me a little bit. So my mom was here yesterday, and they had to leave before I started, and I was about to do this, and she's like, well, I'd like to see you do that. So I'll make a video. She was pretty tired, so I didn't want to make her hang around too much longer. It was nice that they came up for a visit. My mother and my sister. So I turned it into a flat piece. Now I'm just gonna take a sponge, make the edges a little bit nicer, because this is the part of the mug that you handle mostly. The handle, that's why it's called the handle. And so you want it to feel nice. And I guess I could have made a square to begin with, but I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I was thinking I was gonna do round handles. So now I'm doing squarish round. And they are also going to be, instead of round, I'm going to make them square. So I do that by, try to use what I have here. Do I want this edge? Yes, so I'm just going to smooth it along this edge. Flip it over. See where this one left off. Try to make them even. Okay, flip it over. And then I'll do the same thing here. Okay, so it looks more like this. And then just smoothing out some edges. That means it'll be less I have to do once I hook it to the mug, to the cylinder that's not a mug yet because it doesn't have a handle. So now I'm going to take this end of this paintbrush and I'm just going to shape the little part that's going to hook to the cylinder, kind of form it so that it's kind of like a cylinder. Can you see that? It's a little more than it needs to be, but it also gives me some clay to smooth, because you'll see what you have to do to hook it to the mug. Okay, so this is what I have. Looks like that. And I'm just going to set it over here. I'm setting it on top of a sponge to get the ends a little more wet. See if it works without falling down. There's a sponge in there. It's not going to stand up probably. Alright, so now I have my mug, and I always put the handle on the side where I have my signature. So I'm going to put the handle where I'm going to want it to be. And you have to get it straight. And I like it a certain distance from the top so your thumb has a place to go when you're drinking. So I just set it there for a second, and then I make a little mark to show me where it is. So I'm just lifting up the handle a little, poking in a thing on each side. That way it makes it easier for me to get it exactly where I want it. Going to fall over every time I put it in there. So all right, so that's what I end up with. Can you see the little spots? So now I'm going to take my prickly little thing, and I like to stab it a few times first, like poke holes in it, clean off the old dry clay first. This is called scoring. So right now I'm poking some holes because I'd like to get some space for the stuff I use to glue it together to go down in the clay. And once I poke the holes, see the little holes? Now I'm just going to scratch and make a little, just like on the back of tiles that you install in your house, how they have like a crisscross pattern basically, or they have something that sticks up. So it has something to grip onto. So it looks like that. So I use pure vinegar. I have it in a little jar over here. White vinegar. I put a couple of drops on each of those spots. And then I'm going to take the handle and I'm going to do the same thing to the handle. I'm going to poke holes in it. and then scratch it. And while I'm doing that, that vinegar is soaking into the mug, into those spots where I have the scoring done, the scratching. So now that it's sunk in, I'm going to put a drop on each one. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, decide which one I want on top. That's the way I want it. So I'm putting my finger on the inside so that I don't bend my mug, and then I'm just wiggling it until it's stuck. And then I'm going to come down here at the bottom and do the same thing. Make sure it's where I want it to be before I wiggle too hard. And now that I pressed it, you can see like there's a little bit of extra on the edges, so I'm going to just take my thumb or one of my fingers, whichever one will fit, because I got such big fingers. I'm going to go around and smooth those edges out. And what will happen is, because of the scoring and the vinegar and the consistency of the clay that the mug is made out of, the dryness of both are the same. So the handle's about the same dryness as the mug, which they're a little bit more dry than I wanted to be because I couldn't sleep last night, so I ended up having to do my sleeping later into the morning. Okay. And sometimes I make a little, if I don't think it's going to be strong enough, I can't get enough clay smushed here, I'll make a little, roll a little piece of clay and put it around and then smooth that in. But I'm just going to try and go, I think it looks cleaner when I just do that. So usually I take this end of this tool and go around and just make sure all the edges are smooth and clean, but I was able to get it pretty good with my finger this time. But I can go around and be doubly sure. And you know, when you have fingernails, you have to be careful how you approach the clay. Because I'm constantly putting fingernail marks on my work. So if you ever get anything of mine, look for the fingernail marks. You might find them. Sometimes I leave them there. It's like my maker's mark. Not really. Anyway, you know, this one was pretty easy. Watch this be the one that cracks. So if you don't do this right, what happens is when either while they're finishing the drying process or when you fire them, the handle will crack around the edges of the handle. And that's why you have to be, it's like really, you have to be very careful and make sure you follow all the little rules of clay, which means you have to, some people use slip, I use vinegar. It hasn't failed me yet. Knocking on wood. Okay, so I don't usually do this, but I've seen some people paint around the edges, and I think they're just doing it to kind of do the final, make the edges look neater. And I'm just doing it with the vinegar, since that's where my paintbrush is. And actually, I can see a little spot that doesn't look perfect here. Oop, see, fingernail. Luckily it's wet enough I can smooth it out, but still. And the last thing I do is take my sponge, and I try to use one with edges for this process, and I go around, make sure everything's neat, and tidy and clean looking. Okay. And there is, I just scratched it. There is a little bit of brown. And then this is here, in case I do something where I have to smooth it out. My mom spotted some brown clay on one of my pieces, and I just saw some on here. It's just from where tools have been in brown clay and then get mixed up with the other. And they will show if there's no glaze. Did another, I gotta call it while I'm done here, because sometimes you just have to stop, because then you make it worse. Because I've just done my fingernail 3 times. Okay, so there's my handle. As I'm putting it in the mirror, I can see little bits that I want to be more perfect. So when it dries, I can double check it, and if there's any place that I need to like sand a little bit, I can do that. But that's it. That's how you put the mug on. That's how you put the mug on. It is how you put the mug on, because if you don't put a handle on it, it's not a mug. But that is how you add a handle to a mug. There it is. Beautiful.